Here at Game Changing Dads, we know how tough it can be to stay motivated to be a good husband and a good father. That's why each week we bring you honest, real discussions about how to lead, love, and live. If you're looking for ways to take charge of your leadership role at home, visit GameChangingDad.com to find helpful tips on how to stay focused on your number one priority as you maneuver through the demands of your career.
On today's show, I get to interview my brother-in-law, James Schaeffer. James Schaeffer is an Air Force Academy graduate, an entrepreneur, and also a broker-dealer and a registered investment advisor. Also a simulator instructor down at Shepherd Air Force Base. This guy's been married for 24 years, has 4 awesome kids, and just an incredible guy to get around, to mentor with, to have a conversation, and a man's kind of man. James Schaeffer, welcome to the show.
Hey, Ray, thanks so much for having me on, man. It's a pleasure.
And this is super awesome. He's not only like on our show, he's actually in my house right now. I'm downstairs in the office and you're upstairs in the living room.
Hey, it's the best place to be, man. Close to my bro.
Absolutely. And this is the first for Game Changing Dads. I'm not sure if this is how it's supposed to roll, but so far it's looking pretty good.
Awesome.
Thanks
so much, man.
All right, so here we go. So in a snapshot, take the next couple minutes and to our audience, kind of give us your background, where you grew up, all the fun stuff you went through, and lead us all the way up to where you are currently today.
Yeah, absolutely. I was born and raised in Marietta, Georgia. I have a twin brother, John, and he and I both graduated from high school together. We actually had the same grade point and same SAT scores out of high school. So it was pretty wild. We got simultaneous appointments to the Air Force Academy. We went there and graduated from there with the same major. My major was engineering sciences, space vehicle design. From there, both went on to pilot training at Shepherd Air Force Base and flew together there. It was a blast. Both stayed on as instructor pilots. And I flew there for about 5 years, got married, and then moved up to New Jersey where I flew C-141s with the Air Force for another 5 years. All over the world, through Europe and Africa, all across the United States, and loved it. But got out of the Air Force, and during that time frame, I'd started learning about business and owning your own business. It was interesting, especially being a pilot. You always had an alternate or a backup, and so it just made sense to be able to do something outside of that. Well, that brought us back down to Texas, where my wife was from, Wichita Falls. And when I got down there, the simulator program had just started up at Shepherd. And one of the things I love to do was instruct, was to teach. I love seeing the light come on and helping guys get it in pilot training. And so I started back with them, became the chief of academics for pilot training and taught systems and aerodynamics. And now I still work there part-time. I had started into some areas of private equity and developing business. And so I got my broker-dealer license, my registered investment advisor certifications. And so I do that with Constant Wealth Management, a friend of mine, Chuck Constant, down in the Dallas area, and really enjoyed expanding and growing that. But also as an entrepreneur, developed other businesses. We have some things on Amazon and some e-commerce arenas that we're working in as well. And part of that is just to be able to have a broad, kind of diversification, have multiple streams of income, and have these things that are beyond just what you do on a day-to-day basis. It's allowed me to be able to, as I mentioned, to go part-time, but to spend more time with my wife and my family. I have 3 boys and a little girl, and that is my heart and soul. I love doing that. We're very active with our church as well. My wife leads music ministry there, and I've preached on numerous occasions there as well. And that part is kind of really fundamental to who I am, because as a believer, it governs and guides every single thing that we do. So with that, we've been able to raise our sons and daughter. One is at a conservatory in Pennsylvania, Sight and Sound Conservatory, and one is a student at Belhaven University. Our third son just graduated. All 3 boys were Eagle Scouts, and then Jacqueline is coming up her senior year in high school. So that's it in a nutshell.
Awesome. Absolutely love it. Love your background. Love what you're doing. Of course, like I said, you're my brother-in-law, so you are in it, man. Love it. So let's go back to earlier regarding your snapshot. you had, with your twin brother. And I know the question's on everybody's mind right now. Okay, you guys are twins. You guys are like, grading out. You guys are following each other, kind of career path early on, Air Force. Did you all have the opportunity to date the same girl? And were you able to pull that one off?
Oh man, absolutely, absolutely. In fact, not only we switched on instructors, and we switched on a date. I went out with a girl down in Dallas, and then the next weekend he went down and went out with the same girl, and she never knew. We're identical twins. So he's really very sharp, good-looking guy. He really is.
I had no clue I was going to get a story with that. I figured you'd just pass and absolutely say no, but there you go. See that? Look what I opened up there.
Well, it's interesting too. We've had flown all over the world, and I've had commanders see him someplace and think, what's Schaeffer doing here? And he would just reel them in and go right along with it. So.
Wow, that is pretty awesome. Love it. Hey, do you remember probably about this time last year that you had written an article and a story for Game Changing Dads? Hopefully the book will be coming out this fall. Do you want to, I'm listening to your entrepreneur background, and I know currently you're mixing, the kids with business. You really kind of dialed that in over the years. But can you walk through, that story a little bit and what was tugging on your heart when you guys were in the network marketing company, and, what you really saw from afar and really started dialing it in and really start thinking about your family? Love that story.
Sure. No, absolutely. Well, what happened, we had been, approached and started to work in network marketing. And whereas that industry has a lot of great things, it has a lot of challenges as well. And one of the big lures of that business and whole industry is, hey, you can get to the point where you can have all your time back. Unfortunately, the challenge that comes with that is that time doesn't come back to you. It now is spent in constant meetings and conferences and business settings, and it really requires more and more. And the one kind of the tipping point came when my daughter said, hey, Dad, when we reach this certain level, will we get to see you again? And man, it was a knife to the heart, because I realized, wow, the thing that I want the most is spending time with my family. I'm not investing it. I am giving it up, because it will never, ever come back. And it isn't that I want to spend every waking moment with them. That's not realistic. But those times that really mattered, weekends and things that would be gone. And the next thing you know, you're coming back to a home filled with strangers. And I watched guys at the higher and higher levels there that were divorcing. And I was like, well, there's not a model for me. Or their families were really estranged from them. And I thought, wait a minute, I thought the dream was getting to that place where you have that income to spend that time. And yet all it would do was open up another level or another place that they would go to. And eventually they'd be happy when they got there. When I realized they were never happy, not along the way. They weren't satisfied. And so the things that I realized then was I had to get off this merry-go-round. I could not just keep trying to elevate to that point, that eventually I'd have a relationship with my family and just have a relationship with my family. And it was at a cost. I mean, we stepped out at a time when we were doing very well. It wasn't that we couldn't make a go of it. We were actually making a great income from it. And when we walked away, a lot of people were like, what? How in the world could you just leave that income? I said, well, because I have something greater. There's something that matters more and is more value to me than just the income from that.
Absolutely. And I love that, especially from a business standpoint, because I think there's so many dads that need to hear that story, and they need to identify that, there's a roadblock there. There's something holding me back. Or, I mean, come on, how powerful is that? I'm walking into a house of strangers. And I love hearing that from you, because you got it right off the bat, where sometimes it may be several years down the road, then all of a sudden, it may be teenagers or in their 20s. And the reason I started Game Changing Dads was I missed my dad when I was younger. I mean, self-employed. I mean, he was just running the business, 16, 18 hour days, 17 years with no vacations, in his 40s and 50s. Yeah. So I still to this day miss that relationship with my dad. And what a great point that you identified it through your daughter. Don't get me wrong, but there was tugging on the heart there, and you identified it and decided to make a change, which is awesome. So tell me about, and you can pick a business, you have several of them, but talk about a business that you currently own that you decided to say, hey, let's do this as a team. Let's do this as a family so the kids can learn, and it can be a learning experience for everyone.
Oh, absolutely. There's several of them that I've really worked in anything that I do to bring them along, at least to understand, whether they're going to participate and do that business themselves or not. I wanted them at least to have a part of it and to know what's going on. So I would use any of those things as teaching lessons, to talk about, profits are better than the wages, or passive income, or why are we accomplishing this? And one of those, I work with a great friend of mine, Matt, and his wife, Amy Miller, with School Spirit Vending. And that's one business that's a vending business. And one of the great tenets that he has is he wants it to be family run. He wants that family to be a big focus of it. And we were able to, with that, do everything from building machines, counting quarters. I would set locations, but along the way, they each had, as they grew, and it was neat because each had small parts. And I don't care if it's just, picking up something and moving it to the other. Based on the age of your kids, give them a role, give them something they can step in to be proud of and do. And one of those, my oldest son now has actually his own route with that vending business. But it came from growing up with that, seeing how we were able to operate and do that, and each person having a different part to it. My youngest son now actually heads up all of our servicing and has several friends of his that help us service that. And those were from seeds planted years ago along the way that he's able to step up and do that. And it's not a mystery to him. He's seen it grow.
Awesome. Seeds planted. I mean, that's huge, because some of us forget, and I'm a big encourager of, taking your kids to work, taking your kids to, whatever your place of business may be, and let them learn. Because if not, I remember early on, I mean, it was some great memories, but I was probably 10, 11 years old. And, going to a store opening when my father was working in the supermarket business up in Philadelphia. And I didn't really do a lot, but I thought it was the coolest thing of, how they would stock the shelves and bring everything in for a brand new store opening. And my dad there, and I would be dressed up in the suit, and I'd have the scissors and all that. But what a great experience looking back, several years after the fact. I mean, it's incredible. Love it.
Well, we try to do this too, Ray, and you bring up something that's such a good point, because, you're not looking at, and I did this spreadsheet and this, you're looking at those memories. And this is such a vital thing in anything that you do, especially connecting with family, connecting with children, is you're looking for those touch points. And sometimes, and this is what people I think get wrong, is sometimes those points are when things go wrong. One of our greatest memories that we still laugh about is a camping trip that we got rained on the entire time. This place looked like a POW camp, just a mudslide. But we remember that one, and some of the greatest, heightened experiences we've totally forgotten about, but we remember those things because we were doing it together, and going through adversity together really, really brings you close. So people will shun, I don't want anything to go wrong. And it's kind of like, nothing drastic and death defying, but sometimes those challenges are things that will bring you closer together.
Absolutely. Love it. And it's like, going back, and I talk to, my mastermind groups about this, or fast forward until you're 90 years old, like you said earlier, are you creating memories as a family? It doesn't have to be, big, exclusive, crazy vacations. It just, hey, we got rained on, we had some craziness going on, but, we got through it, we survived. Or is it going to be the situation where, wow, man, I'm glad I got that big house or that big car, and I'm glad I worked all them hours. What's more important? And I'll be honest with you, I don't want to go, hit 90 and just be laying on my deathbed going, man, I don't want any regrets. No, and I want to have that family time. I mean, we can, and we had this discussion earlier. I mean, God's going to teach us things. Sometimes we don't understand it. It may take a little while to get, but it's going to be there for the opportunity. We have our families right in front of us. It might not be financial in that season, but our families are always there. And just to give back to your families and love your families through all the situation. I mean, that's what I'm excited to share that story with who's ever by my side at that time. And just to look back, not that, wow, man, we lived here and we accomplished this. No, man, I remember, Mission when she fell off the bike for the first time, or, Razor put his skates on for the first time.
Oh, yeah.
The memory thing is huge. So let's fast forward a little bit. Let's, what are you currently doing? Any kind of life lessons, over the last year you would like to share?
Oh man, absolutely. And you know, our main focus right now, I'm part-time at the simulators, and I love that because I'm still serving really the Air Force and still connecting in that way. And I see young pilots coming up, and one of the biggest places I'm able to have an impact is to talk with them about, especially young married, couples, young married pilots, and to be able to have an impact with them, for their future. One of the things that I'll tell them, kind of three main pieces of advice from a marriage standpoint, especially young married, is one, don't screen your wife's phone calls. I've seen too many guys that'll pick up their phone, they go, it's just my wife, and they'll send her to voicemail. And I go, are you an idiot? The person you love the most, that means the most to you, that you trust, and you're going to screen her phone calls? Screen everyone else's, but not hers. Pick it up. Now, my wife knows, even to this day, she calls, if I can, it's done. I'm going to pick this up. It's never a, swiping to the side. And I've had that happen in class. And I tell them, look, she's more important than you are, so I will interrupt class and take this call. I've had several students come back to me and say, hey, man, that made an impact. And I do the same thing now because of that. So you can plant those seeds for others as well. The other thing I tell them is don't take your marriage advice from your single buddies, because they have no idea how to do that. And the third one is don't hang out with people that don't like to be married, because eventually you'll be one of them. And so find and seek out those relationships and friendships with people that do. Now, you can also help others that are struggling, but it's really hard if you can't put your own life vest on first to help someone else out. And so being around those people with marriages that are strong, that are growing and building is vital. And that's from a personal standpoint, that's one of the ways I'm able to serve. From a business standpoint, we're doing some things in e-commerce online via Shopify and Amazon, and those have some pretty steep learning curves and some hard lessons to learn. I really encourage people to pair up with people who are already ahead of them, get mentors for that. With our investment things, we look at, people can't be an expert in everything, and so we're able to take people, especially starting off, and help them get a game plan for where they want to go. And I mostly work with military couples because of some of the challenges they're going through that are unique to them. One big lesson learned just recently is when it comes to contracts and agreements, a lot of people don't put a whole lot of stock in that. It's like, oh yeah, I just signed it and didn't read it. And I'll tell you, those are some hard lessons learned. I would recommend being the last person to sign a contract or agreement. Let someone else sign that first and you sign the final. Make sure you got copies of everything, but also work through those, because when everything's going great, it's not as big of a deal. But man, when it turns upside down, you need to know what's in that. And so those are just some life lessons I've learned, some a little bit harder more recently.
So, let's get back to the simulator. Okay. So you're an instructor, you're a teacher at Shepherd's Air Force Base. So, I love this. I just took a note. You're not going in there just doing your job. I mean, you're making a difference. Now, if you can grasp that about serving other people, loving other people, not just going into work, doing your 8 hours, doing your 6 hours, doing your 10 hours, but when you're giving back like that. And it's funny, I left that question kind of open-ended, and I was hoping you would go down, especially with some of the conversations with you running the sims. But I mean, we can impact people, man. You can, hey man, I fly an awesome jet. I don't even know what the verbiage is for that. I don't know if I just sounded stupid, but whatever. That's you. That's not me. But when you're serving people and giving advice to maybe fathers down the road or husbands down the road or single, I mean, hats off to you for going above and beyond.
Thank you.
Awesome. Absolutely love that. That's why I love having folks like you on my show, because it's just these little life lessons that either the father is going to pass down to the son or the wife, or just it's going to get just mixed up in there somewhere, and it's going to make a difference down the road. I greatly, greatly appreciate that.
Well, it's interesting. When I talk to them, I'll say, hey, this is me talking to my 20-year-old self, my 22-year-old self. These are the things I wish I'd learned then. Instead of you having to go learn them by your own experience, learning them by the experience of someone else. And they call that, really, that's wisdom. One of the things, and you mentioned this before, but bloom where you're planted. If you're there, that may not be what you're doing forever. That's okay. But you need to excel there. A lot of people have the thought process that say, well, I'm just going to min run it in my work and do this, just put in the minimums. But then when I get to here, I'm really going to do well. And you go, I'm sorry, you're building a habit. And if you do that there, you're not going to magically do something different someplace else. So give it there. I mean, let them because it'll recognize and it'll set you apart even there. And I've had accolades from there because of that, that I wasn't seeking, but because I was going the extra mile and doing above and beyond. And then that spills over in other areas. So don't say, well, I'm going to be one way here and another way there. It doesn't work. Create that habit of excelling, of going the extra mile, of being a benefit and blessing to others. And it will pay so many dividends beyond.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Man, a lot of nuggets in there, buddy. A lot of nuggets. Well, how about your kids? I mean, yes, you're a great example, but, to teach that to your children, I mean, how did that look, 10 years ago?
Well, let's back up even further, because I want to go to that. But I think a lot of people, start to think, well, when our kids are in their teens, I'm going to do this. And just like I said, if you don't do it at the beginning, a defiant act when they're 2 or 3 may look cute then, but it looks ugly at 15 and 16 and 17. And so if you don't start early, and we did a lot of training, we would teach them, hey, what do we want? When I say your name, I expect you to look me in the eyes. So we would train it. I mean, we'd have a training session of 10 minutes and we'd practice. Hey, Josh, look me in the eyes. Okay, and reward them and have them come. Hey, look me in the eyes. To this day, I can say my son's name. I say JT, and he'll look me in the eyes and connect and immediately. But it all started back at 2 and 3 and 4. But as looking at 10 years ago, it went from kind of a correction relationship to now a leading and guiding relationship. And we're able to more make a suggestion or say, hey, notice this. And because of the relationship that we had, we also had inroads to be able to help them in who they're choosing as friends, who they're hanging out with, helping them recognize. And to this day, they'll recognize when someone's going down a wrong path or they're making poor life choices, because they can talk to us and go, hey, Dad, this person's really going through this, and say, hey, why is that? Well, it's because of this, this, and this. The other one is, a friend of mine said it this way, I borrowed it from him, that our kids have a drug problem because we drug them to church all the time.
Awesome.
and so, and the other one is, I believe in timeouts. I take time out of my busy schedule to discipline my children.
Amen. Amen.
But that is a big deal, because a lot of people, they don't want to be bothered. They're so busy. I go, no, this is important. You have to stop now and correct and do this now. But they're able to see these relationships and friendships and people who are making bad choices. But it's because we help to model them and have that discussion with them. And as believers, we'll bring them to church. Instead of just farming them out to someplace else, they're able to sit with us and learn and grow. And instead of saying, well, you'll get this when you're older, we try to teach them those lessons along the way and as they grew.
Yeah, I mean, that is powerful. Don't wait to plant or implement. Do it at a young age, because here's the other scenario, and you just said it. Someone else is going to be planting.
That's right.
Someone else is going to be sowing, and someone else, you want that someone else to be you. Mom, dad, guardian, you want that person to be you, because once that outside influence happens, to reel that back in is a tough deal, because I've seen it a lot.
Well, and you're not playing catch up or emergency. You're developing it along the way and strengthening it. Same thing with your spouse, with your wife. The question comes about, when should you tell your wife that you love her? Before someone else does.
Right.
I mean, the bottom line, it should be early and often. There should never be a question. One of the big things we did, and this was one I learned from a friend of mine that was immensely powerful. One of the biggest fears that your children have is that you and your wife are going to split, because they see 50%, 60% of their friends who have that as well.
Yeah.
And so a simple thing that we did when our kids were young was we'd say, okay, guys, I grab Joy and say, hey, get your cameras ready. So they put their fingers up like this and go, you guys ready? And I'd kiss her. And they go, click, click. And you guys get that? Because I wanted to plant that seed, that picture, that every time mom and dad are good, we're strong, we love each other. And so each time they go, do it again. I loved it because it planted that seed early. And even now, if we have challenges, which we do, for them to still know, hey, mom and dad, we're going through something, but we're going to be okay because of who we are and the relationship and the foundation that we have. But I would really recommend making sure those things, visibly showing it. With my sons and daughter, you'll ask them. I said, they know that I said, I will hug and kiss you until the day one of us dies. That I am going to show affection. I'm going to show you and demonstrate. People are like, well, that's not who we are. We don't demonstrate it. Why not? Really?
Yep.
You're embarrassed? Why? To show and hug your son or daughter, to tell them that you love them? Instead of waiting for some dramatic event, do it now.
Wow. That was powerful. Love it. Love it. So let me ask you this. You've been married for 24 years.
Yep.
So tell me, you have it all figured out? I mean, there's no more learning, and I'm being super Philly, Kensington sarcastic right now.
Absolutely
24
not.
years into it. I'm only 11, so you're doubling me plus a couple.
People ask,
and let's say we have someone on the line that maybe 25, 30 years into it. Is it always a learning deal?
Yeah, man. I say I don't have all the answers because I don't even know all the questions. And when it comes to this, if anyone thinks that they're wired or they stop learning, they stop growing. Giving advice to young married couples and old married couples, it said you need to continue learning. There are books that are constantly being written and series, those things. I said, as much as you study for flying a jet, you should be studying for marriage. You should be studying for how you raise your family, for these things that matter. What I find though is the big thing, and this is for me, especially as a believer, as a Christian, is my relationship with God really affects my relationship with my wife. When I find she and I are having conflicts, it's usually because I am not close to God. I'm not listening to him because he has that wisdom and that guidance. And in his word, he has the words of understanding and how to live, peaceably and well with your wife. What I find though is there's a book called The 5 Love Languages, and finding out what it is that she needs and how you're able to communicate with her is crucial. And what I find is I feel like, I'm doing so much for her, or telling her I love her, when what she needs is maybe that quality time or those words of encouragement or service, acts of service. That those things are how she would be receiving it or listening and learning. And so along the way, after 24 years, we have some things that we kind of know about each other, but there's still things that we discover and still things that are growing even deeper still.
That is good. And The 5 Love Languages, great book. I reference that, I think, in chapter 5. I took just a bunch of pages and put it together. But yeah, and if you don't realize what that love language is, and just let me share a really quick story. I remember, being married that first year and just vacuuming the house, man. And to Ray, oh man, love Julie, man. Look at the rose, I love Julie. And then, week after week, like, whoa, what's up, man? Hey, I cut the grass. Look how great the landscaping. Not her love language. Now, my love language a little bit. Oh yeah. Totally like feeding into myself and thinking I was feeding into her. But,
You're speaking Chinese, man.
Absolutely. Words of affirmation. She wants to be that, I love you. Everything's okay. She, and that's huge for her. But man, great reference, great book. And I like what you said, when you're leaning more into God. I was always taught, and I'm a brand new Christian as of 20 years ago, but the more you lean in, the more understanding you have.
Yeah.
It's almost like, he holds that peace, but if we're far away in the world, forget it. We don't have that peace. We have the chaos, which is crazy. And I'll bring up too, if someone gets to a point in their relationship, let's say they're 30 years in and they're just like, hey man, I made it. I don't need to learn anymore. You probably have to start questioning your friends. I love James because we feed each other like crazy. I mean, we haven't talked in a while, but man, I love I call it a speed conversation. Literally, man, we're just going, man. We're on last night, 1:00 in the morning. I could have stayed up all night, man. It was
that's
on.
the thing about it. It's as if we had no time had passed. That's the thing.
Yeah. And you need men like that in your life. How important, whether it's a mastermind, whether it's a Bible study, you need to find people that have that belief system and just work together, let down the defenses and let God work through your heart. It is huge.
You know, Ray, that's such a good point too. And this is one of those things that I've come to learn over these past few years, the value and power of being in a group, in a mastermind group, because after the initial posturing and stuff, all of a sudden you kind of lay bare and get to know the real person behind that. And if you don't have someone that would call you out, that would go, hey man, I've heard this 4 times from you and you still haven't dealt with it. Because people who really, you know, a worker or a coworker, they don't care what you think. But here, guys, they don't have a vested interest, you know, for them to be able to say something to you, and you know they're doing it from a standpoint of wanting you to grow and to build because you would do the same thing for them. And it's hard for people to say, well, I have some guys that I can do that with. Usually it's not unless it's one that's you're scheduled on a regular basis to meet, knowing that there's accountability, because otherwise you'll just let it go, you know?
Yeah. Tough love. Absolutely love it. And sometimes, like I said, it's that conversation, that awkward conversation, but it's going to get you to the next level, whatever that may be. If we're having a conversation and I'm asking you questions, just being vulnerable. And that's tough for guys. Been there, done that.
Yeah.
But once you start kind of letting the defenses down, man, that's when true growth happens, which is awesome.
You know, what's interesting too, when it comes to masterminds, a lot of people will talk about, well, I just want to get a couple of guys or be accountable to a neighbor or to a friend at church. And I'm going to go out here and challenge you. The free ones, you know, I don't think you'll get as much as when you invest in one, as when you're doing that, because now you actually have a physical investment, you know, in that, and something that's meets on a regular basis. My wife one time, she asked me about, you know, what we're paying for that mastermind, you know, and she's like, oh my gosh, that seems like a lot. I said, hun, if you understood the value and what they're showing me in our marriage and in relationships, then you would be writing the check with a smile on your face. You double it, you know. So don't look at this as a cost. You're investing that in me and in who I am with you and with my family as well.
Skin in the game. I mean,
Yeah,
we go
man.
out, let's say if we go out and we buy a business and someone just says, hey, we have this business, here it is. Or, hey, we just put out $800,000 for this business. Totally different deal. Yeah. Investment. You got to put the money down. I've actually worked on both sides of the fence, and I've seen a crazy result when people start paying for the service. Big time.
True. It's true.
Well, let's get into this, James. We are going to hit our rapid fire. This is where I'm just going to fire off 5 crazy questions. And if you want to pass, you can say pass. If not, answer them to the best of your knowledge, and we will rock and roll. First question is your favorite book.
Well, my favorite book is actually the Bible. I mean, because of the impact on it, on me. And we do a reading through the Bible for a year. But outside of the Bible, my favorite book has to be How to Win Friends and Influence People, Dale Carnegie. It had a massive impact on me in people skills, in understanding and knowing people. I paid my sons and daughter to read it. And so it was $20 anytime they read it. They could read it 10 times in the year, and it would have been worth every penny to have them have read that.
Awesome. Great book. Great book. So let's do favorite quote.
Favorite quote. Proverbs 3 says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him and he will direct your paths. Some places it says make your path straight. But it's saying, hey, when you start just trusting yourself instead of saying, God, you've got a greater plan, even in the midst of struggles and challenges, that I can still trust in you because I know you're good and that you love me.
Amen. That's a good one. How about number 3, favorite husband moment?
Favorite husband moment. Actually, it's funny, but it was just recently. Joy and I have gotten, grown to the place where our kids were starting to look towards that, empty nest kind of arena. And one of my favorite moments was actually a week in Hawaii. We had never been to Hawaii. We took a week, and for us to realize it was about day 3 or 4 to go, you know what? We really, really love each other, and we like each other, and we get along. It was just gorgeous moment on a beautiful scenery, but that was a backdrop to me, how precious she is, to me, and realizing, wow, I really, really love her. And more important, I really like her.
Very important. And she is in the other room, so easy there.
Oh, yeah.
All right, number 4, favorite dad moment. And there may be maybe several here.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. A simple one it was with my daughter and then some with my sons. With my daughter, along the way, we've had, it was from Parent Trap, and they had this, the little handshakes and things. And so she and I have this handshake that we do that we've done since she was tiny. And to this day, we'll still do it. And every once in a while, we'll skip a little bit, but every once in a while, I'll just say, "Hey, Bear, come here." And some of them from movies and some of them different, kitty headbutt and butterflies, but we'll do that. And she's 16 now. And for her to come still do that with me, it means the world to me. My favorite with my sons, I think, was we went on a 100-mile Philmont trek with the Boy Scouts. And the oldest was young enough and the youngest was old enough. And, I was there as well, in prepping for this. And for a 2-week time frame, we were in the mountains of New Mexico at Philmont Scout Ranch. And it was one of those pinnacle moments that we look back to. Challenging. We spent a lot of time in lightning position and going through the grind, up and downhill. But it was really one of those highlight moments. And all 3 boys are Eagle Scouts, but that was one of their pinnacle moments as well. And I was just happy to be there to share that with them. And I was heartbroken for some of the dads who couldn't be. And a lot of it was because they chose not to be, or they were working and didn't take that time. And it was heart-wrenching because you're not going to recapture that,
Yeah, absolutely. No doubt about it. And our 5th question, can you share one piece of awesome game-changing advice with our listeners today?
Absolutely. One of the things, if I were to look back, over my life and say, hey, the areas where I got in trouble or the areas where I experienced the most difficulties were areas where I really tried to do it alone. And instead of seeking the advice, from people that I respected, seeking out those mentors or those relationships and asking for it, we'll still deal with struggles in our life. And to be able to go back and say, hey, you have so many people in your life that you could go to. And the Bible says in a multitude of counselors, there's wisdom. And but even a fool will despise this wisdom and correction. Those are 2 separate places. One's in Proverbs. But to be more willing to be vulnerable, to open up to people that love you, capable friends, family, mentors, and to be able to identify those earlier rather than later. It makes a difference more even now. But I know, looking back, had I done that earlier, that I would have been much further in some areas than I am now. And so my advice to someone would be to, don't delay that. They say, when should you plant a tree? Well, today or 25 years ago. And so
Amen.
You can't do anything about 25 years ago, but you can do something about today. And to be able to identify those people in your life that you respect, that are worthy of that have the fruit on the tree that you have access to in those relationships with. A lot of people will look at, well, if I could get these great, Kiyosaki or Vaynerchuk or any of these guys, if they could just listen to me, and I go, no, you have people who are perfectly capable in your own sphere of influence. You just need to seek them out.
Awesome. Love it. I mean, it's crazy, but yeah, some of us procrastinate, some of us wait. But like you said, if you missed opportunities, do it today. Don't miss that opportunity again if you didn't plant 25 years ago. Totally get it. And it doesn't matter. I mean, I don't want to share our ages, but we're both 50 now, and I'm watching your life. I mean, you're just getting stuff, you're running with it. I did some major switching of gears over the last year. But, that's what it's all about. You don't hit a certain age. And I do see this, almost like 45 and then you're like done. Well, this is my career and this is what it's going to be like. It's a consistently growing thing. I mean, I want to get better. I want to, lean more into God. I want to, get closer to my kids and my family and my wife. I mean, that's what life's all about. I mean, keep in mind, we're not adults of God. We're children of God. And you just have to have that childlike zest for life, man. I mean, that's what it's all about.
Right. You're right. I have guys that I work with, some that are a few years younger than me and some only a few years older than me. And their heart and attitude, they only got one foot in the grave. I mean, they are done. And I joke around, but I say, hey, I am 25 years old with about 25 years of experience. Because that's my heart. That's my heart and attitude. I don't want to be someone, when I work out now, it's not trying to get buff. It's so I'm not limited by things. I can do stuff with my son, say, hey, we want to take a hike here. We want to do this. And yet there are people who their heart and attitude is, I've learned all it is. I'm not growing anymore. But I'll watch guys who retire, and the average lifespan after retirement, especially in the Air Force, is 18 months. When they stop
Mm.
and don't continue to do something, they die. They wrap up and they die. And so being able to stay, engaged and encouraged. That's why people go, "You're doing so much stuff." They go, No, this is staying active and encouraged versus just, shutting off and cruising.
Amen. Absolutely. And just for you listeners, just to let you know, James is pretty buff. All right. FYI. All right. Well,
It looks
hey,
like a muscle, only smaller.
James, I totally appreciate your time today. Thank you so much for being on Game Changing Dads. And what we'll do, if you can go in and rate our podcast, we have a new special we started probably about 2 weeks ago where we will name you or your company on a live show. So just go into Game Changing Dads and look for our podcast and give us a great review and rating, and we greatly appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll catch you next Tuesday. God bless.